let me assure you that our priority will remain to ensure stability and security.
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, security for Canadians.
Galactic Empire!
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
You are listening to the Election Fallout on OppositionRadio.com.
And welcome to episode 17 of Election Fallout. We've been occupying the internet since the day after Canadians handed Harper his strong, stable, 4-year dictatorship. My name is Tony Lofin, and I'm here with, as always, my co-host Mike Cook out of Orillia, Ontario.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, how are things going in Orillia?
Not too bad at all. I'm just looking out my window right now, and just a second, somebody's at my door. Oh my God. It's Mark Delahunty from This Hour Has 22 Minutes. I've got to let you go and call 911.
Okay.
Of course, I'm just playing around there.
So, are you going to call 911 or what?
No, I'm just going to let it be. I'm going to leave her out there. I think it's probably just a trick-or-treater. Everything will be all right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you feel threatened?
A little bit. I don't have any children to worry about, that might or might not have been outside, but it is dark outside right now. So do it that with you what you will, but
I don't know what to say. I'm worried about you, man. I think maybe we should call 911.
Maybe it's actually, she dressed up as Xena once. Maybe that's what's going on outside. Maybe it's just a trick-or-treater dressed up like Xena.
So obviously you're making a little bit of fun of Rob Ford now.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. I mean, there's no real great commentary to be had on the whole situation, but I mean, it's hilarious, so I just want to have some fun with it.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, you know what else happened today?
What's
By
that?
most people's reckoning, the 7 billionth person was added to the planet's population today.
I felt that.
Did you feel it?
Yeah, I felt that, totally.
Took over to 7 billion population?
Yeah, it felt a little crowded around here.
Yeah, it is getting kind of crowded with the old 7 billion people.
So what do you think, what would you like to say about that? Where does that bring us? And
well, you know what? I was watching coverage of this and reading whatever I could on it, and the most common response that the mainstream media has is they're doing stories on, okay, now we've got to look to other planets to colonize, and they're talking about Mars and if there's life on Mars and if we could go to Mars and stuff like that.
I wasn't really looking to move to Mars, not yet anyways.
No. I don't know. It's just, I mean, I could start rhyming off interesting factoids,
Yeah.
I mean, it may or may not lead one to believe that it's time to get off this planet and go to Mars. For example, 1/3 of the population growth in the world is the result of incidental or unwanted pregnancies.
It's hard to imagine.
How does that relate to our show that we do that is specifically focused on thwarting the right-wing agenda that Stephen Harper has enlisted our country in?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Stephen Harper, as a result, in conjunction with his Muskoka initiative, remember where he said maternal health was going to be a big thing for him?
Yeah.
Well, funding is withheld from any organization or country that has legal access to abortion.
Right. So anywhere that is trying to do something about population control and is definitely trying to put any sort of relief on these issues, Stephen Harper isn't interested in helping those people.
Yeah, worldhunger.org estimates that there is a total of 925 million people in the world today that are currently hungry. We're not talking malnourished, we're talking hungry.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there's a whole bunch more than that are also malnourished.
Exactly.
Or you can be very malnourished and not be hungry, I don't know, just kind of interesting.
Well, on the whole population growth issue too, as much as I can understand where it has to be a concern and it has to be something that has to be watched, I also get really curious about is our current system of economics, it almost bends towards not wanting to be able to sustain any sort of population growth itself. It makes you wonder if there are other ways that are sustainable to approach population growth, food production, and I mean, it seems to be distribution problems.
Well, here's the
rather
thing:
than
we're living on
problems.
we're living on a finite planet with finite resources. Okay, and all of this coverage today of evacuating and going to Mars is ridiculous. It's clearly ridiculous. So one of two things is going to happen, right? Either the birth rate is going to decrease or the death rate is going to increase. And we're sitting here with a prime minister who believes that no matter who you are, say you're in Africa and you were raped in the Civil War, you shouldn't be able to abort the child, even if you have AIDS. You know what I mean? So this is exactly how ridiculous the situation is, and I thought I'd bring it up because today on Halloween 2011, we've reached 7 billion souls.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and in the last 100 years, the world population has tripled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting little factoids here. I may as well keep going. In the year 1983, the world grain production per person began to decline. Okay? 1985 was the year that humanity's demand for resources first exceeded supply. As in, we grow enough food, but it's just, we don't distribute it, or they, whatever. No, it's been almost 30 years now since we didn't grow enough food. 1989, the year that the world fish catch per person began to decline. And again, if we're going to have an increasing population, everyone understands that the marine life in the ocean is reaching a tipping point. So I don't know. It just boils down to birth rate is going to decrease or death rate is going to increase. And we elected a prime minister who has a really backward, primitive attitude towards the whole matter.
Yeah, his position is kind of irrational in a lot of ways. It doesn't seem to be based on an approach that has any goal.
Yeah.
It just seems to be a position that he's chosen to take that is popular for perhaps that right-wing constituency with some evangelical Christian aspects, avoiding abortion and different issues like that. So
yeah. Anyway,
I think there are a lot of other issues surrounding population growth and the sustainability and food production and things like that on the planet Earth, and there's a lot of different things that stop us from finding ways to keep. We're not even interested in finding new ways to keep people fed or to make sure that this doesn't become an actual issue. Because population growth, obviously, I mean, it's not something that shrinks anymore. Population growth increases all the time.
There's basically one way we can feed more people on this planet right now, because as most people might be aware that follow, I don't know, the concept of peak oil. Oil is food. Every calorie of food that we currently produce requires 10 calories of oil. Since we passed peak oil a couple of years ago, we can expect to pass peak food as well shortly thereafter. So yeah, if we don't figure out how to decrease the birth rate, we're going to have a massively increasing death rate, which would be unpleasant.
It'll be a nasty crash when that happens.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't see any way to expand the food supply unless we discover vast new amounts of oil. Or something like nuclear fusion comes along, giving us a cheap, renewable source of energy, which will allow us to grow unlimited hydroponic food.
Right.
That's the only way I see us getting the world sustaining more people than it currently right now is through nuclear fusion. And that's not going to happen because, Fukushima basically, has reinvigorated the anti-nukes movement.
Yeah, nuclear energy has its has definite issues to discuss concerning nuclear energy, and
yeah, I watched a panel discussion today on RT, and it was kind of interesting because they had one person on there who thought that the way to decrease the birth rate was to educate women. Okay, fact of the matter is, 83% of children born today are born into countries that already have a hunger problem. Okay, so the woman who was discussing the fact that, like, the education of women is something that has proven to reduce birth rate, I can see that. That's cool, you know. It's just something that's incredibly difficult to implement in the conditions that we know to exist in the third world. You know what I mean?
Right. And where every other economic factor drives people in those countries to have more children.
You can let's say I don't know. I guess the highest population growth rate right now is in Nigeria, and this is not a country that is exactly peaceful, with a restive population being controlled by mercenary armies hired by the oil industry. But every woman has 7 children in that country. Okay, so just take your average African woman and say, okay, you throw her in school, educate her as to, you know, whatever form of education that tends to produce a lower birth rate. And what happens when she goes to church and the priest tells her not to use condoms? If you're a prostitute, if you use condoms, and it's forbidden. So she's got some person telling her that she's going to go to hell if she uses condoms, and then she becomes pregnant as a result of a Civil War rape. Right. Right. Like, you can't avoid
There's so many other education issues that come up in and around this issue.
Like, strictly using education to reduce the birth rate of women in third world countries is a pipe dream. Just like going to Mars is a pipe dream. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you had this American guy on there who all he wanted to talk about really didn't even address the concept of world population at all. He wanted to hold China's feet to the fire because of their 1 baby per couple law. As in, it's a human right that China violates to have unbridled reproduction. I don't know. I personally support the idea that China has fewer babies than they used to.
That seemed to be one of the issues that came up in, like you say, the mainstream media coverage of this, was that how it was unproportionately unfair to rising countries like India and China that try to stifle their birth rate through different incentive programs and laws, and yet these are the countries that their population growth, even just with, you know, the world population grows, of course, but these people are in their countries are experiencing it probably in a more drastic fashion, because that's where the population growth is increasing. Like you said, Niger, India, China, and they see it firsthand, and they know that they need to do something about their population growth. It is sad that to some extent different problems occur when population growth is curbed. In China, of course, the issue becomes the abortion of female babies in preference for male babies. You know, so it's not. It still isn't an issue that should make one slide completely to the other side and think that population control or population growth needs to be an issue that has to at least it needs attention, and it needs the concern of people in order to understand that you know, we can't just keep adding 1 billion people to the face of the earth every what did you say, was it 1 billion people over 100
11,
years?
12 years. It's 1 billion extra people every 11, 12 years.
Every